Sit down and come be quiet.
I'll wash them right here.
All right, good morning. All right, all right.
Oh.
All right, shalom. Shalom, Yahweh Hashem, Yahweh Shai Thumb to the brothers. Shalom, Yahweh Shema, Allah Thun by Hashem, Yahweh Shai to the sisters. With Israelite School, Universal Practical Knowledge, started at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General Yohanan. We're not affiliated with any other Israelite group or affiliated with any other Christian organization. All right? Today is the Isupk history class. All right? It's the Isupk history class. History is very important to understand, very important to know. We just don't want to look at history, right? We just don't want to look at history and bypass history as if it's not important. History is very important to know. History is also very important to learn. That's something that we have to do. All right? That's something that we have to know, something that we have to look into, and something that we have to study. If you don't know history, you're going to be missing a lot when it comes to who you are, what you need to know, what's going on here, what's going on there. History plays a very important part. Like, for instance, I say this all the time. History plays a very important part when it comes to learning about Christ. All right? Christ is part of our history, right? Learning about Christ. Learning about Yahweh Shai Mashiach. That's Jesus Christ in the Hebrew. Learning about Yahweh Shai Mashiach is very important, right? That's part of our history. That's something that Christ did things and events that were once in the past, right? It's very important to learn our history, because if we don't know about Christ and we don't learn about Christ, which is part of our history, then we're not going to know anything about the birth of Christ, how he became, how he got spoke to the Salakia, how he came and found the disciples, how he's going to return, how he's going to put, all this other stuff, how he's a man of war, or how the Most High is a man of war, and how Christ is very austere. Like, these are characteristics of Christ. History will explain the characteristics of Christ, how he is, what he does, what he's going to do. All these things play a part in history. All right? So do not take history lightly. All right? Do not take history lightly. That's pretty much the point of all things. So, before we get into it, does anybody have any questions? Before we get into it, does anybody have any questions? Now we're going to leave off. We're going to leave off where we left off, pretty much. All right, we're going to start where we left off. But does anybody have any questions before we get into it? All right, I'm going to get into it. So now, what we're learning about today, we're starting where we left off, the Immaculate Conception. Some people call it the Immaculate Deception, which is still fair, which is still right, still true, right? When it comes to it being a deception, all right? So, there's a lot of things that we were taught about Christ. There were a lot of things that within the Christian church teaches about the birth of Christ. And the Christian church teaches so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, which are God's chosen people, that Christ was born of a virgin, right? meaning the virgin that he was born, also the virgin that he was born from, her name was Mary. Now we may have known from the Christian church that Mary is the mother of Christ. And the Christian church teaches that Mary did not have a man, nor did she have sex with a man, but she was able to give birth to Christ. Sometimes the Christian church teaches that that Christ, that Mary pretty much had sex with an angel, and that's how Christ came to be. Some Christians say that the Most High just said alakadabra, alakazam, and boom, Christ started to form in her womb, right? These are things that the Christian church teaches. It's very far from the truth. All right, we're going to do a little bit of recap, and then we're going to go ahead and start where we left off. So we're going to jump to 2 Samuel chapter 7. All right, that's where we're going to go. 2 Samuel chapter 7. Second Samuel. We're going to start at 2 Samuel. So it's like in 2 Samuel chapter 7, and we're going to be at verse 12. So now it says, 2 Samuel chapter 7 verse 12, and when thy days be fulfilled. So this is the Lord talking to David. So to give you a quick backdrop, because we're gonna start where we left off, but I want to give a backdrop to the brothers and sisters that came here. All right, Salaki. Okay, Salaki. So it says, when thy days be fulfilled. This is talking about King. This is when thy days be fulfilled. This is the Lord talking to King David. This is during the time of King David, and the Lord is talking to King David. And it says, and when thy days be fulfilled, meaning when thy days are up, right? When you're done, when you completed what you completed, when you're just done, right? When thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers. When it says when it says thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, right? Thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, meaning you are going to be buried where your fathers are. So when you pass away, right? When you are deceased, when you die, the Lord is saying you are going to lay with your fathers, right? So when thy days be fulfilled, when you're done, when all is complete, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, meaning you're going to be buried next to your fathers. You're going to be buried with your fathers, right? I will set up thy seed after thee, right? The Lord said he's going to set up thy seed after thee. What is a seed? A seed is literally referring to a man's sperm, which comes out of his bowels, that literally comes out of him, right? It's the seed, something that's used to produce, right? When he's talking about thy seed, it says, I will set up thy seed after thee. It's referring to King David's children, referring to his children, his kids, his offspring, right? These are all different. I'm saying the same thing: offspring, children, seed. This is what the Lord is talking about when he's talking to King David. It says, I will set up thy seed after thee. Meaning he's going to raise his seed up. He's going to set his seed up, right? Which shall proceed out of thy bowels. Meaning the seed that the Lord is going to set up is going to come out of King David. So the seed that the Lord is going to deal with is going to come out of the bowels of David, meaning it's going to come out of King David. It's not going to come out anybody else, right? It's not going to come out of some smojo over there. It's not going to come out of some man over there. The seed that the Lord is going to set up is going to for sure come out of King David. That's why it says, when thy days be fulfilled, meaning talking to King David, right? When it says, when he's talking to King David, right? He's saying, when thy days be fulfilled, meaning when your days are done, when your life is over, when you completed everything that needed to be completed, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, meaning you will be buried with your fathers, talking about King David. I will set up thy seed after thee, talking about King David's seed, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, which literally means that he's coming, right? Literally, the seed that he's setting up is going to come out of the bowels of King David. It has to come out of King David. Remember, the seed that the Lord is going to set up here is coming out of King David. And I will establish his kingdom. It says, and I will establish his kingdom. So the seed that the Lord is going to set up, that's going to come out of the bowels of King David, right? It's going to come out of the bowels of King David. The Lord said, I will establish his kingdom. So now we know that now that seed has that seed now we know the gender of that seed. Now we know the gender of that seed, right? Now we know the sex of that seed. It said, I will establish his kingdom. So now we know the seed is going to be a boy, then eventually become a man. Go ahead and sit down. Go and sit down. Now we know that the seed is going to be a boy that's going to become a man. Now we know the gender. Now we know the sex, right? Now we know who, right? Now we know at least at the minimum the gender and the sex of the person, right? That the Lord is going, the kingdom that the Lord is going to set up, right? So it says, which shall proceed of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. So now we know this man, right, that the Lord is going to set up and establish his kingdom comes from the bowels of King David. He comes from King David. Now we know for sure, right? Now we know for sure that this man, that's the seed that the Lord is going to set up, and he is going to establish his kingdom. He comes from the seed of King David. He comes from the bowels of David. Let's go to verse 13. And he shall build an house for my name. So this man, he's going to build an house for the Lord in the name of the Lord. He shall build an house for my name, right? That's what the Lord is talking about, right? This is just a recap so we can start where we left off. I want to make sure we all remember. If y'all didn't take any notes, I'm not going to say that's fine. That's not okay. You want to take notes. You want to commit this to memory. This is something you need to know. This is history. This is history. We're in the Old Testament right now. This is history. This is in the past. This is the Lord talking to King David in the past. He shall build an house for my name, right? So it says, he shall build an house for my name. So the seed that the Lord is going to set up, the seed that the Lord is going to establish his kingdom, right? This man is going to build a house for my name. Meaning he's going to build a house for the Lord. All right? And I will establish my throne. So I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. It says, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Meaning the throne of his kingdom is going to be forever. That's what it says in verse 13. And I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. A king sits on a throne. A man that's in power sits on a throne. He has a certain seat that he sits in. He has a certain seat that he fills. That's absolutely throughout time. Every ruler, every king, every emperor, they had a seat of their own that they sat in. That's why when you're in America now and you go out and vote for the president, which you're not supposed to if you are so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American, right? You are not to go out and vote. But if you go out and vote, like how other Americans go out and vote, they are trying to fill a seat. They are trying to fill a throne for a leader to fill, right? To fill that seat, to fill that throne. In America, they call it a seat. There's many type of seats, but I'm referring to the main seat that, quote unquote, plays an important part, which is the President of the United States of America. That specific seat, right, is a throne. You becoming president, you sit in that behind that desk. That is the throne of America. All right, everybody understands? So just like here in verse 13, it says, "I will establish the throne of his kingdom." Right? I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Meaning, this kingdom that the Lord is going to raise up. It's like the seed that the Lord is going to set up. The kingdom that he's going to establish. Right? The throne. He's going to make sure he establishes this throne forever. Meaning this kingdom is going to be forever. This throne is going to be forever. That's something that we have to understand. That's something that we have to know. So this throne is going to be forever. His kingdom is going to be forever. Now this is how you know. Now this right here, this specific verse, when it says in this specific verse in 2 Samuel chapter 7 verse 13, right? When it says, "I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever," this is how you know it's talking about Christ. This is how you know this is a precept about Christ. This is how you know that this is a prophecy about Christ. This is a prophecy about Yahweh Shai Mashiach. Because his kingdom, his throne, is going to be forever. Because remember, there's a lot of people that come from King David. There's a lot of people that come from out of David, right? King Solomon comes from David. He was a king, right? King Solomon was a king. King Solomon had a throne of his own too. But King Solomon's kingdom didn't reign forever. If anything, it actually did the complete opposite. If you think about it, if you look back into history, if anything, King Solomon's kingdom did not reign forever, and it did the complete opposite. It fell apart, it split, and the Lord put it into two. Then you had the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. That's what happened after King Solomon. So his throne wasn't forever. But it says right here, "He shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever." Christ's kingdom is forever. Christ's king is going to be forever. His throne is forever. His rulership is forever. His power is going to be forever. His leadership is going to be forever. Right? His authority is going to be forever. Etc., etc., etc. All right? So if you go to 2 Samuel chapter 7 verses 12 verse 13, this is talking about Christ. This is a prophecy about Christ. All right. Now let's go to Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14. All right. Now I believe this is kind of where we left off. Well, we were in Matthew. I believe we were in either I believe we made it to Matthew. If I'm not mistaken, I think we made it to Matthew. But let's just get to it, right? But I do believe that we made it to Matthew. So Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14, right? So Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14. It says, Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. So this is the Lord talking to Isaiah. This is the Lord talking to the priest and the prophet of the Lord Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah. Right? We're still in the Old Testament. We are pulling precepts and scriptures about Christ. We're pulling precepts and scriptures about the prophecies of Christ and Christ's coming and Christ's birth and things along those lines. These are prophecies spoken about in the Bible. Right? These are things, these are prophecies spoken by the prophets in the Bible about the coming of Christ and Christ's birth. These were things that this is what, if you were an Israelite, if you were a Jew, this was something that you was always studying. This was always something you were reading about at this time. If you were before Christ, you was reading about a king coming, right? You was always, you was reading about a king coming, a certain ruler coming to take you out of captivity, to take you out of slavery, to bring the Israelites into power again. You were reading about this if you were before Christ. Before Christ was born, you were either reading about this, you were studying about this, or you was walking past the priests and prophets of the Lord back in the old times, In the times of Isaiah and Ezekiel and things along like that. It's a lucky word. Go ahead and go sit down for me. All right? All right? It's a lucky. Go ahead and go. Okay, no sweat. No sweat. All right. So when it comes to so if you were in the times of Ezekiel, Isaiah, if you was in the times of Jeremiah and Micah and all the prophets from the Old Testament, you were either walking by them hearing about, follow God's laws, statutes, and commandments and things like that. And if you were listening to them, right, you probably heard about a certain king coming. You probably heard about some great authority coming to rule the earth and to take you out of captivity and things like this, and what you're supposed to do and follow the Most High and follow the priests and prophets of the Lord, right? This is something you heard about. So if you was an Israelite or if you are a Jew, either or, I'm saying the same thing, by the way, all right? But if you were an Israelite, you've heard this plenty of times. You've heard about this. It was known, and you was looking out for it, right? So Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14, therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. So the Lord is talking to the prophet Isaiah, right? We're in the book of Isaiah. Behold, behold meaning look at this. Behold meaning face your eyes on this. Like look at this, pay attention to this. Like that's old English, behold meaning like look, like pay attention, look at this, feast your eyes on this, right? Behold, a virgin shall conceive. All right, it says a virgin shall conceive. Can anybody tell me can anybody online or anybody in class, can anybody tell me what it means to conceive? Does anybody know what it means to conceive? It says a virgin shall conceive. First things first, tell me what a virgin is, quickly. All right, tell me what a virgin is, and then two, tell me what it means. Tell me what it means to conceive. Anybody online, if you know, quickly if you can. All right, quickly if you can. If you know, still answer. All right, but let's see. All right. Right, a virgin's a young lady. Right, a young woman, right? All right, now tell me what does it mean to conceive. Right. Pretty much to be pregnant. Right, meaning, right. You guys are absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct. So let's go ahead. So now, if you guys were in last class, all right, if you guys were in the class before, you probably already have this definition, but I'm going to go ahead and give it to you. All right. So right here, this is the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. Very good book to use. Very good book to have. Has a lot of information in it. It's very good. All right. It's very good to have. It was a group of scholars together that was studying the Bible from top to bottom, every word, every comma, every whatever the case may be, and they made a dictionary about it, so you can know what the Bible is talking about or referring to. So it says, we're on page 600 in the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, right? We're going to a young woman of marriageable age, whether married or not, right? So it says a young woman of marriageable age, whether married or not. The reason why they said married or not, because a virgin doesn't mean you can be a virgin and still be married, right? You can still be a virgin and be married. Now how is that the case? How could you be married and still be a virgin? Now, of course, because of Christian philosophy, right, you may say to yourself, well, it's easy to be married, right, and be a virgin, because we think the definition of virgin is what? You haven't had sex. In Christian society, in American culture, virgin means you did not have sex or you have not had sex. So, of course, when I ask the question to a lot of people, right, I say, how can you be married but still a virgin. Well, in American culture, that could be possible, quote unquote. And here's why. Because in American culture and Christian society, a virgin means you haven't had sex. But to get married in American culture, you don't have to have sex to be married. All you need is a ring and a piece of paper. But because we take the philosophies and the culture of another race of people and another nation people, and we apply it to the Bible, it's going to confuse us. Like, that's what confuses a lot of so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans when reading the Bible. Because you're taking another culture and applying it to another culture. Like, we have to understand the Bible is its own culture. Like, the Bible has its own culture, its own heritage, its own traditions. So if you take the traditions and the culture and the heritage of another nation of people, in another race of people, and try to apply it to another culture and another heritage and traditions that come from another nation of people, that's going to cause confusion, and you're going to confuse yourself, because the Bible is a culture of its own, right? So now in Israelite culture, right? In Israelite culture, we say what? In order to be married, anyone online, quickly if you can, anybody online, can you tell me how are you considered married in Israelite culture? Anybody? How are you married according to Israelite culture? And if you are a trooper, right? If you're a trooper, give me my precept. All right. If you are a trooper, right? In according to the Bible, right? According to the culture of the Bible, according to the heritage of the Bible, according to the traditions of the Bible, you are considered married when you have sex. Can anybody give me my precept? Can anybody give me my precept quickly if you can? Does anybody remember the precept? Right, correct, Aqua, by having sex. That's correct. You are considered married according to the culture of the Bible, according to the traditions and the heritage of the Bible, according to the culture of God, according to the traditions of God, according to the heritage of God. In order to be married, in order to be considered married, you had to have sex. You had to have sex, Salaki. Does anybody know my precept? Can anybody give me my precept? Does anybody know where I can prove in the Bible, right, that sex is marriage according to the culture of the Bible, according to the heritage of the Bible, according to the traditions of the Bible? Anybody? All right. For time's sake, you guys can still answer it, but for time's sake, I'll give you the precept. All right. This is how you can prove that sex is marriage according to the Bible. Exodus chapter 22, verse 16. And if a man entice a maid, it says if a man entice a maid, right? Meaning you pretty, okay, to lack of better words, you're talking to the sister. You know what I'm saying? You're spitting game to the sister. You know, you're just talking to the sister. You're enticing, you know what I'm saying? Right? Giving her something to like. You like this sister. You want this sister. So you're making her laugh. You're joking with her. Whatever the case may be, you're enticing her. Right? So if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed, right? Meaning she is not talking to another man, or she's not courting another man. This is how important it is to the Israelites of what it means to have a man or to even be talking to a man. We could not even talk to a woman if she's courting a man. That's not how it works. Like, that's how important it is to not talk to a woman, period, if she has a man. We couldn't even talk to a woman if she was courting a man. Meaning she doesn't even have a man, but she's courting a man. Meaning it's not betrothed, meaning engaged. To be betrothed, if you look up the definition of betrothed, it means engaged, meaning you are engaged. Meaning you're in the status of before being married. That's what it means to be engaged. You're courting. You're getting to know each other. We couldn't even entice a sister if she's already talking to a brother. Now that's also spiritual too as well. Why would you? She already has her eyes on a brother. And another brother already has his eyes on her. And he's talking to her and she's talking to him. Why are you trying to get in between that? There's thousands of other sisters that have no brothers talking to them. There's thousands of sisters that have no man, that are not courting a man at all, but you want to talk to this sister. There's plenty of beautiful black sisters out there for you, but you want his. You want mine. Come on now. It's absolutely ridiculous, it's absolutely disgusting, and absolutely homo. Why do you want something that's mine, or why do you want something that I'm talking to, that I'm engaging, right? That I'm courting? It's absolutely ridiculous, right? So the Lord says, if a man, Salaki, in Exodus chapter 22 verse 16, and if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed, meaning she's not engaged, right? Meaning she's not engaged, meaning she's Salaki, meaning she's not engaged, she's not betrothed. So if a man entices a maid that is not betrothed and lie with her, it said lie with her, meaning have sex with her. To lie with the woman in the Bible means you had sex with this woman. Or what it means to lie with a man, meaning you had sex with this man, right? So the Lord says, and lie with her, meaning you had sex with this woman. So you enticed her, she was not taken, nor was she talking to a brother, and you had sex with her. He shall surely endow her to be his wife. Meaning there is no way out of this now. You are married. She is now your wife because you had sex with her. Alright? So this is the precept, right? So this is the precept to prove, right, that sex is marriage according to the Bible. Alright? So this is what's going on. Right? Come on, what's going on? Okay. 1 second, baby, alright? You gotta wait. So now, this is the precept and the proof to let you know that sex is marriage according to the Bible. Alright? So now, here we go. Now we're here in the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, right? This is in the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, alright? And we're going to get the definition of marriage in the Compact Zondervan Bible Dictionary, alright? It says marriage is an intimate personal union to which a man and woman consent. So right off the rip, so this is the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, right? And when it comes, Salaki, 1 second. So now when it comes to the Compact Zondervan Bible Dictionary, remember, this is the study of the Bible. This is the study of the scriptures, right? There was a group of scholars and they were studying the Bible. And they went through verse after verse after verse, scripture after scripture, from Genesis to Revelation about the Bible. And this is the definition of marriage, which is proven. We already proved that sex is marriage according to the scriptures. Now we're just backing it up with a book. It says marriage is an intimate personal union to which a man and woman consent. So now we right off the rip, we know that marriage is only between a man and a woman according to the Bible. Marriage. Now, this is what we have to understand. Being married, right? This is what some people don't understand. Salaki if I could. This is something that we have to understand about marriage. Marriage comes from the Bible. Marriage is from the Bible. Marriage comes from the culture of Israelites. It comes from the culture of the Jews. It comes from the culture of the Israelites. You're not going to find marriage unless they took it from the Israelites and they took it from the Jews. Not everyone believed in marriage the way we believe in marriage, which is between a man and a woman. That's what marriage is according to the Bible, right? That's what marriage is. It comes from our culture. Other cultures didn't believe in marriage like that. They had sex with anything and everything. It didn't matter if you had a wife or a husband. You were going to have sex with men and you were going to have sex with women. You would have sex with animals. It didn't matter. If there were toasters, you were going to have sex with a toaster. If you had a lamp, you were going to have sex with the lamp. That's how other cultures were. That's how other races were. Other nations of people were. But marriage comes from the Bible. Marriage comes from God, right? That's how marriage is ordained. That's how marriage is all about. It comes from the Lord. And it says right here, you are to be married between a man and a woman. Not a man and a horse. Not a man and a pig. Not a woman and a horse. Not a woman and a zebra or a giraffe or a toaster, right? Or some lamp or some candle. Not a man and a man, nor a woman with a woman. A man and a woman. Marriage has always been with a man and a woman. No one ever considered. It wasn't until roughly around 2008 or 9. I'm going to say 2008 or 9. Very recent. It wasn't until the 21st century when damn near the entire earth considered a man having sex with another man or a woman having sex with another woman being okay and accepted and classified as a marriage and can be legally married, right? And be called a marriage and being called pretty much being called a couple, a married couple, right? Husband and husband, wife and wife, whatever the case may be. It wasn't until the 21st century. In the 20th century, you would have never seen it. The 19th century, no. Now, was there homosexuality throughout the earth? Yes. Was there lesbianism throughout the earth? Yes. But it was never marriage. Because marriage was always classified between a man and a woman. And they get it from the Bible. They get it from the scriptures, okay? Hopefully we all understand that. So that's why when you open up the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, it says, right, to which a man and woman consent, meaning it's agreed on both ends, meaning the man says, yeah, I want to marry her, and the woman says, yes, I want to marry him, right? Consummated. It says consummated. Does anybody know what consummate means? I'll get the actual definition for you, all right? I know what it means. Can anybody tell me what does consummate means? There should be one word that you can use to what does consummate mean? Consummate, right? Does anybody know what consummate means? When you consummate something, does anybody know what it means? Anybody? Does anybody know the definition of consummate? You guys can still put in definition, but I'm going to give you the exact definition of consummate. So it's very important to understand the words that are being used when describing something, explaining something, whatever the case may be. Not just in the Bible too, but also whatever you're reading, right? Whatever you're reading, whatever you're studying, look up these words that these people use. Also, when you're reading the Bible, these words have meaning. These words have definitions to it. So you have to understand, so you have to look up these words to get a better understanding of what the Lord is trying to tell you, or whatever is written is trying to tell you. Understood? So you always want to get into the habit of looking things up if you don't know. Even if you think you know. Because that's my rule of thumb. I can think I know what it means, I still look it up. I may know what it means, I still look it up. That's just how I do it. Alright? So you guys can do it too. So consummate. Now you guys said an agreement complete. Those are all good synonyms and pretty much the broad perspective of what it means to consummate. But this is the literal definition of consummate. Right? Used as a verb. To make marital union complete by sexual intercourse. Okay? So that's literally the definition of consummate. Meaning to make a marital union complete. Just like what the Aqua said, complete. Right? Just like what the brother said in agreement. To make complete by sexual intercourse. Meaning consummate means complete by having sex. So the definition of consummate, the lack of better words, is to complete by having sex. Meaning it's not complete unless you have sex. So it says, marriage is an intimate personal union to which a man and woman consent. Consummated, meaning complete by having sex. And continuously nourished by sexual intercourse. Right? By sexual intercourse. Right? By sexual intercourse. And then it goes on to say, and perfected in a lifelong partnership of mutual love and commitment. It said a lifelong. Right? So sex, according to the Bible, according to the culture of the Israelites, is marriage. Sex is marriage. We just read it in the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. Right? Right? It's consummated. It's completed by sex. Marriage is completed by sex. And it's a lifelong. It just said in a lifelong partnership. It's lifelong. Meaning unless you no longer draw breath. Right? That's literally what lifelong means. It means as long as there's breath in your lungs, you are, whoever you had sex with, you are married to them for life. That's it. So whoever you had sex with, you are married to them for life. That's that. That's it. Alright? Now, of course, that's when you are married to them. That's not talking about if they committed adultery or whatever the case may be. Alright? That's a completely different topic. But if you had sex with this person, if you had sex with this woman, that's a lifelong partnership. That's it. It's not, well, I'm no longer happy and I'm going to just leave. No. If you had sex with that person, you are to be with that person. It's not until, I'm just not feeling it anymore. There is no, well, you're just not making me happy anymore. Or, we get in too many arguments. Or, you're here and you're there and I'm here and all this other stuff. Once you decided to put your rod into that woman, once you decide to open up your legs to that man, that was a lifelong partnership. All right? That's it. That's marriage. Sex is marriage according to the Bible. So now, a virgin, we're back at Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14. A virgin shall conceive. Now, once again, the reason why we brought this up, it's going to confuse you if you do not understand the culture of the Bible. You're not going to understand what a virgin is or what marriage is if you do not understand the culture and the heritage and the tradition of the Bible. You are going to be confused if you take America's culture and try to place it in the Bible and make the Bible make sense according to America's culture. It's not going to make sense because it is not the culture of America, it's the culture of the Israelites. So a virgin, right? A virgin shall conceive. The definition of virgin is a young woman of marriageable age, neither married or not married. That was the definition of virgin. So a virgin is just a young woman. That's all a virgin is. Now, of course, America's culture, I'm just recapping, America's culture, a virgin is a woman that has not had sex, or a person, period, that hasn't had sex, right? So technically, you can be married. Technically, you can be married in America and be a virgin. Because to be married in America, you just need a ring and a piece of paper. So, of course, when you take this scripture, a virgin shall conceive, right? Well, you're thinking, well, this is talking about Christ. And Mary is the one that conceived Christ. And she wasn't married, apparently. So, that means God must have said alakadabra alakazam. Or she just didn't have sex and a baby magically appeared. Because she's a virgin. And you could be a virgin and married according to my culture. So this what this must be talking about. No, that's not what it's talking about. That's why you have to understand the history of the Bible. That's why history is so important. You have the history involves learning the culture of the Bible. History involves learning the heritage of the Bible. History involves learning the traditions of the Bible. So we can understand. So moving on. A virgin shall conceive, right? And bear a son, right? So a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Now this is talking about, right? Now this is talking about this is talking about the Lord, right? This is Christ, and I mean the Lord. I'm referring to Christ in that context, right? So this is talking about Christ, right? This is a prophecy about Christ. This is a precept about the birth of Christ. So in the Old Testament, right, Christ was spoken about. Christ was in the Old Testament. He was being prophesied about coming and how his birth was going to be, and etc., etc. All right. So now, what we'll do, right? I believe now to find this precept, right? To prove to prove that Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14 is talking about Christ, you would have to go to Matthew chapter 1, verse 23. Let's go to Matthew chapter 1, verse 23, or is it 24? I was right, 23, Salakia. So, to prove that Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14 was talking about Christ, well, let's go to Matthew chapter 1, verse 23. Matthew chapter 1, verse 23 says, "Behold, a virgin shall be with child." So it says, "Behold," meaning look. It's using the same words, is literally using the same words that the prophet Isaiah was given by the Lord. Behold, meaning look at this. Meaning brace your eyes on this. This is what's going on, right? It says, "Behold, a virgin shall be with child." So now it says a virgin shall be with child. In Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14, it talks about a virgin shall conceive. But here we go in Matthew chapter 1 verse 23, it says a virgin shall be with child. It's pretty much saying the same thing, right? A virgin shall be with child. Like that's why it's so important to understand that the Old Testament and the New Testament are one and the same. You can't have one without the other. Within the Christian church, that's why when we become Christians, that's why when we become Catholics, when us Puerto Ricans and Cubans, when us Mexicans and El Salvadorians and Costa Ricans and Brazilians and Native Americans, Iroquois and Navajo and Creek and Muskegee and Blackfoot and Cherokee and Pequot and Comanche And when so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, when we become Christian, when we become Catholic, and we start learning Christianity, and when we start learning Catholicism, right? It teaches us to not worry about the Old Testament. In some cases, it tells us not. Sometimes it tells us not to even worry about the New. Just focus on what I'm saying. Just focus on how I feel, right? We become lost in the sauce when we don't. When we're in the Christian church, we become completely lost and destroyed when we go into that Catholic mass, right? Right? We are I think it's mosque, Salakia. No, mosque is Islam. Mass. I was correct. Salakia, mass. So when you go into that Catholic mass, right? When you go into that Catholic mass, you're completely lost. You're completely destroyed, right? Due to the fact that they tell you to not worry about the Old Testament. Don't worry about what's going on. Just worry about Christ, quote unquote, right? And I say quote unquote because they're not even teaching you about Christ. They're teaching you what they feel about Christ, but they're not actually teaching you Christ. So right here is a perfect example to understand that you need the Old Testament to understand the New. Literally what's being said in Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14 is you're literally going to see it right here in Matthew chapter 1 verse 23. But you wouldn't know that in the Christian church. You wouldn't have learned that in the Christian church. Nor would you have learned that in your Catholic mass. You wouldn't have learned that from your Catholic priest. Alright? You wouldn't have learned it. So behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son. Here we go. It says, and shall bring forth a son. Right? Here we go. And they shall call his name Emmanuel. Right? Call his name Emmanuel. This is literally the prophecy that Isaiah got from the Most High, talking about Christ. Right? This is talking about Christ right here in Matthew chapter 1. Which being interpreted is God with us. So Emmanuel, which I believe is what's Emmanuel in the Hebrew? Salakia. Amanyala. I think that's Emmanuel. Is it Amanyala? Salakia. But that's Hebrew. Emmanuel is Hebrew, right? The Lord Christ was a Jew. He was born an Israelite. So of course he was going to be given a name in Hebrew. All right. He was given a name in Hebrew. All right. Let's see. So now in Matthew chapter 1 verse 23, this is how you know that it's talking about Christ. All right. Just jump up to verse 16. Matthew chapter 1 verse 16. And Jacob, actually, I don't even want to go there. I may have to go there, but it's a lot here. Well, you can go to verse 21 if you want to too. But let's go to verse 16. And Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. All right. So this is how you know right now that this is talking about Christ. You can go to verse 21. You can just go up all the above, and you can realize that this is talking about Christ in context. All right. But now, of course, this is class. We're going to go all the way up. All right. So in class, we are going to go all the way up. All right. So give me some time here. I want to make sure. All right. Does anybody have any questions so far? Anybody? No questions? That was lucky. That didn't work out. Trying to get this. All right, so now we're going to be at Matthew chapter 1 verse 1. Before we get there, I want to have another scripture ready. So I'm going to open up another Bible app. All right, I'm going to open up another Bible app. I'm going to open up another King James Version Bible. All right. And let's see. There we go. Let's see. Anybody, any questions so far? Kind of like, just let me know. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm not spelling correctly. Okay. I think that's probably why. All right. So now, in Matthew chapter 1, verse 21, let me go ahead and get it. So Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. So we're going to stop all the way on top, right? And the reason why is because there's something that's very important that Christians miss, all right? When you read math, when you're reading up. We're talking about the Immaculate Conception here. We're talking about the birth of Christ. So a lot of Christians look over this, which I don't know. I don't really know how. Like when coming into the truth and me learning about the Bible, right? Because I was, of course, when I was in the world, I wasn't actually opening up the Bible, right? I was just going all based off what was told, right? And so now when I start reading the Bible and studying the Bible, under the authority of Commanding General Yohanan and Isupk, I'm thinking to myself now, like, man, only if they opened up the Bible, certain things would be answered. You know what I'm saying? Like certain things you just couldn't say. You know what I'm saying? Like when you start opening up these scriptures, when you start opening up these scriptures, you're going to be thinking to yourself like, wait a minute. I don't think what you're saying is correct, because the scripture right here is saying something completely, absolutely different. And I can't fathom the fact that this could be true. All right? Here we go. That's what I want. Here we go. All right. So now let's jump up to Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. And this is why I say this right here. And I'm going to ask you guys a question. All right? And when I ask you guys this question, I pray that you guys get it correct. I'm sure you guys will, of course. All right? Because you guys come to class. So Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. The book of the generation of Jesus Christ. Now this is the very first verse. This is the first verse of Matthew. This is the first chapter of Matthew. The first book that starts the New Testament. So this is the first book starting the New Testament. And it says, and this is Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. This is the first verse. It says the book of the generation of Jesus Christ. It said the book of the generation of Jesus Christ. My question now is, what is a generation? Anybody? What's a generation? Anybody online, anybody in class, what is a generation? This is where we left off. Okay, a lineage, okay. A lineage, okay. Okay, Khan, okay, you guys are correct. So it says the book of the generations of Jesus Christ. So what's a generation, right? A lineage. It's a bloodline, meaning you come from someone, right? A lineage, your bloodline. You come from someone. That means you come from someone. You come from someone. You are human, right? So you come from someone. You have a bloodline. You have a lineage. Now, I believe right here, let me get the definition of generation, right? Let's go ahead. Let's get definition of generation. I believe it talks about well, it does talk about procreation, all this other stuff. Where is it at? Right here. Right. Here we go. Here we go. Right. A body of living beings. This is the definition of generation. A body of living beings constituting a single step in the line of descent from an ancestor. Right? So it's a lineage, like you guys said. Meaning you come from an ancestor. Meaning you descend from a certain person, right? Which is a lineage. You birth, right? Now, this is what we have to understand. Let's see who is in Christ's lineage. It says the book of generation, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ. We know in order to have a bloodline, you have to come from a seed. In order for you to have a lineage, you have to have come from sperm. That's here or there. In order for you to have the lineage, like we say this all the time, based off of this verse right here in Matthew chapter 1 verse 1, you have too many variables to explain. If you teach that Christ was immaculate conceived, based off, if you read Matthew chapter 1 verse 1, you have far too many variables to explain. Because in order to be a generation, meaning you have a bloodline, you have a lineage, you were birthed, you come from something, meaning you come from a seed. In order for you to be birthed, right? In order for you to have a lineage, you have to have two. You can't just have one. You can't just have one person. You can't just have one DNA. Like, think about it in science. I don't know if you guys know too much about science, and I'm no scientist. All right, I'm gonna tell you right now, Akim wa akwafian. I am no scientist, so do not come to me like, yeah, Officer Rashomov is a really good scientist. He knows science. Don't do it. So don't do it. I'm not a scientist. Don't know too much about science, but I know a little bit about biology. Just a little bit. Not too much, but just a little bit. When it comes to DNA, right? When it comes to DNA, right? In order to have a lineage, in order to have a bloodline, in order for you to be a part of a generation, you have to have a man, and then you have to have a woman, and you have to have both of their DNAs. And then you have like the X and the Y, and the woman carries one. Actually, no, I think the woman carries the 2, and the man carries the 1. And then whichever it is, whatever it touches the egg is either going to be an X and an X, or an X and a Y, or whatever the case may be. And that's how you know if it's a boy child. That's how you know if it's a girl child. But this all deals with DNA. This all comes from a lineage and a bloodline. This all deals with you having a generation, meaning you descend from a certain ancestor, right? So now, here we go. It says, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David. So Christ is the son of David. Right here it says, the generation of Jesus Christ. This is talking about Jesus Christ. The son of David. Can anybody prove, we went over it not too long ago. Can anybody give me the precept to prove? I think there's like 2 or 3. But I want the one that we just went over. Can anybody prove to me that this is correct? That Christ is the son of David right here. According to his generation, he's the son of David. Right? Can anybody can anybody prove that? If you can't prove that Christ is the son of David, then this is not Christ. Right? Christ would have to be the son of David. Right? So the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David. Can anybody prove to me that Christ is the son of David? How do we know for sure that Christ is the son of David? Right now, it's literally telling you he's the son of David right here, of course. Right? But we just went over it. But I'm going to continue for time's sake. So the son of David, right? So Christ is the son of David, meaning Christ comes from David, right? It's saying right here that Christ comes from David, meaning he comes from what? If he comes from David, meaning he is of David. Right, 2 Samuel chapter 7 verses 12 through 13. Not so much kings. But the Akwaf was right. So if he's the son of David, if Christ is the son of David, then he's saying what? Anybody? He is the what? No, I don't want to get rid of that. Okay. So the book of the generations of Jesus Christ, we'll get that other precept later too, but the Akwaf, that is the precept I was looking for, right? This is what we're, give the Akwaf the hand. By saying he's the son of David, is also saying he's the seed of David, meaning he comes from David, meaning he comes from a man. He came from a living man. He's the son of David, meaning he comes from a seed. In 2 Samuel chapter 7 verses 12 and 13, it explains how the Lord is going to raise the seed up. He's going to set thy seed up. He was talking to King David, and he was going to set up thy seed that's going to come out of your bowels and establish his kingdom. And he's going to build a house for my name. Right? And the throne of his kingdom will reign forever. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what the Lord said to King David. Well, this is where it's at right here. The book of the generation of Jesus Christ. The son of David. Right? The son of David. Meaning he comes from coming from David. King David. The son of Abraham. Here we go. Meaning he's also the son of Abraham. Now remember, you have to understand the culture of the Israelites. Why is it listing men here? Why is it listing men here? Why? Now here we go. This is something we have to understand. Why is it important? We have to understand the culture of the Israelites. Because of American culture, your mother's line is so more important than your father's line. Like, because how America is set up, especially how the black community is so destroyed, right? And because we're mostly raised by our mothers only, and we barely see our fathers, right? Well, we're so used to just, my mother's this, my mother's that, my mother's this, my mother's that, my mother's, all this is, it's all about your mama, right? It's all about your mama in America. So your mother matters. Like, according to Jewish culture, which is the white man's culture too, you are who your mother is, right? If your mother is Jewish, then you would be Jewish. In America, they kind of play off the same thing in some cases. It's always what your mother is, or my mom's this, my mom's that. Like, every time you ask someone, pay close attention to this in America. When you ask someone their nationality, the first thing they'll tell you is, well, my mother is this, so I'm this. You know what I'm saying? This happens in the black community. This happens in the Hispanic community. This happens in the Native American community, right? Like for example, in the Latino community, our Latinos and our Latinas, they'll tell you like, hey, yeah, well, my mother's Mexican, so I'm Mexican. But come to find out, her father's white. we would make you white. Now, I understand your father's white and he just had sex with our sister and left her because that's all he wanted to do anyway, was just to have sex with her and not care nothing about her, and then marry a white woman 10 years down the line and just have some child out of wedlock, whatever they call it in America, right? No thanks to that. You think because you never seen your father before, because your father left your mother, you think you're Mexican because you think you are who your mother is, but you're not. You're not. You're just a so-called white man, because you are who your father is, and that's correct. Because the man holds the seed. You are what your father is, and so forth. Men carry the generation. Now, how can we prove this? We have to understand the culture of the Israelites. The culture of the Israelites always base things off of their fathers. All right? Real quick, you can find that in Numbers chapter 1, verse 2. All right. Numbers chapter 1, verse 2. Take ye the sum of all the congregation of the children of Israel after their families, by the house of their fathers, with the number of their names, every male by their bulls. Right? So now, that's a good precept to use to let you understand. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. But Numbers chapter 1, verse 2 is a good precept to understand that it was always Israelite culture. You are who your father is. You were always considered who your father was in Israel. So if you came from Issachar, your father was Issachar, you were an Issacharite. If your father was Judah, you was a Judite. If your father was Benjamin, you were considered a Benjamite, right? If your father was Simeon, you was a Simeonite. If your father was Ephraimite, right? If your father was Manasseh, Manassite, etc., etc. You were always who your father was, right? You were always based off your father. It was old American practice and old so-called white practice to do this sometimes too. That's where you get Jameson from, and Johnson's from, and things, and Robinson's from, and so far and so forth, right? Because you were of your father, right? So your father was James, and you were the son of James, so you was James' son. So Jameson. You were John's son, so you were Johnson, right? That's where that comes from too, by the way. right? This is all about history, right? So in white culture, they kind of did that, right? They kind of did that too, right? Back in the day, right, in old times, it was majority if you are who your father was, and fathers were held to a high standard in almost every race, especially in the race in the nation of the Israelites. All right. So the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham, right? Excuse me, here we go. And it says, verse 3, and Judas begat Phares, and Zerah of Tamar, and Phares begat Esrom, and Esrom begat Aram. Verse 4, and Aram begat Amminadab, and Amminadab begat Naasan, and Naasan begat Salmon. And verse 5, and Salmon begat Boaz of Rechab, and Boaz begat Obed of Ruth, and Obed begat Jesse. Now, here we go. That was just listing fathers. These were men, right? These were men. Now in verse 5, it mentioned begat Obed of Ruth, right? Obed of Ruth. Remember, you can go back into the book of Ruth, right? If you go back into the book of Ruth, for time's sake, we won't do it. But if you go back into the Old Testament during the times of Ruth, and go from, I want to say Ruth, then you have Ruth, then it goes into 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, right? It'll teach you, it'll literally teach you all, it'll give you the line of fathers when it talks about Jesse. Does anybody know who Jesse is? Alright. Actually, I'm going to just give it to you. Salakia, I'm always about precepts. So, Salakia, I'll go ahead and give it to you. Ruth chapter 4, verse 17. So, use this precept for Matthew chapter 1, verse 5. Use Ruth chapter 4, verse 17. Alright? Alright? Ruth chapter 4, verse 17. Alright? And the woman, her neighbor, gave it a name, saying, there is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Right? Jump down to Ruth chapter 4, verse 22. And Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. Right? So now when you go, so after Ruth, and you go into 1 Samuel, right? When you hit 1 Samuel, this is starting to get into the story of King David, in the history of King David. Alright? Did I lose anybody? Does anybody understand what I just did? Kind of loud. Does everybody get what I just did? Kind of loud. Let me know. Hopefully I didn't lose anybody. Alright? So for Matthew chapter 1 verse 5, you can use Ruth chapter 4 verse 17 and verse 22 to prove that these people were talked about in the Old Testament, and these were men. This is literally a genealogy. This is literally a lineage. It's not something made up. These people are real. They existed. Right? Christ was real. He existed. He came from a certain nation and race of people. And he came from the seed of David. He's literally called the son of David because he literally comes from the loins and the bowels of David. Right? So in verse 5, Matthew chapter 1 verse 5, and Salmon begat Boaz of Rechab, and Boaz begat Obed of Ruth, meaning, right, Obed of Ruth, and Obed begat Jesse, because Obed is the father of Jesse, right? Verse 6, and Jesse begat David the king. That was in the Old Testament. We just went there. That we already got our precept, right? So here we go in verse 6. And Jesse begat David the king. So in the genealogy of Christ, there's King David. In the genealogy of Christ, it's King David right here. King David in the genealogy of Christ right here. King David. And David the king begat Solomon, right? Of her that has been the wife of Urias. Right? So King Solomon, it's like if King David then had a son, King Solomon. So here we go. King Solomon is the son of David, right? King Solomon is the son of King David. So King Solomon is also in the genealogy of Christ. Alright? Alright? Verse 7. And Solomon begat Rehoboam. Alright, now it says King Solomon begat Rehoboam. Okay. It says Rehoboam in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, it's Rehoboam. Because to make you guys understand that, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, right? Distinctively written in Hebrew. And the Old Testament was translated out of the Greek. It was also written in Latin and Hebrew as well. But it was translated from the Greek. So when it was translated from the Greek, right? When they transliterated the name, right? That I believe it's the Y or the Ha doesn't turn over, and it's just Rehoboam. Okay, so in the Old Testament is Rehoboam, but in the New Testament is Rehoboam. So you'll actually find this a lot. And the reason why I brought this up to make a point, because in the New Testament, there are prophets in the New Testament that come from the Old Testament, like you'll see names like Isaiah, right? Like that's referring to Isaiah, like things like that. So if you guys catch my drift. So when it comes to, let's see, it says Rehoboam, but in the Old Testament it's Rehoboam. Like for an example, in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 40. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 43. Right? It keeps doing that. I hate when it does that. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 43. And Solomon slept with his fathers. So this is referring to King Solomon. You can go up to verse 42 and it'll literally tell you, and the time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. So King Solomon reigned over Israel 40 years. Verse 43. And Solomon slept with his fathers. So King Solomon also slept with his fathers, meaning he was buried by his fathers, and was buried in the city of David, his father. So he was buried in the city of his father David. So this right here is letting you know that this is talking about King David. We're talking about King Solomon. And in this verse, it's telling you that he's the son of King David. And Rehoboam, his son, reigned in his stead. So within this verse, is letting you know that Rehoboam is the son of King Solomon. So when you read in Matthew chapter 1, verse, 7, and it says, and Solomon begat Rehoboam. Now you know this is real once again. So, over and over again, this is literally talking about this is literally talking about the genealogy and the lineage of Christ. All right. And Rehoboam begat Abiah, and Abiah begat Asa, and Asa begat Josaphat, and Josaphat begat Joram, and Joram begat Ozias. Verse 9. And Ozias begat Jotham, and Jotham begat Achaz, and Achaz begat Ezekias, Verse 10, and Ezekiel begat Manasseh, and Manasseh begat Ammon, and Ammon begat Josias. Verse 11, and Josias begat Jeconiah and his brethren about the time they were carried away to Babylon. All right. This is literally in the Old Testament, by the way. All right. Verse 13, and Zorobabel begat Abiud, and Abiud begat Eliakim, and Eliakim begat Azor. Verse 14, and Azor begat Zadok, and Zadok begat Akim, and Akim begat Eliud. Verse 15, and Eliud begat Eleazar, and Eleazar begat Matan, and Matan begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Joseph. Right? And Jacob, so this is now we're at verse 16. All right? So now we're at verse 16. So they were just naming all the forefathers of Christ. So these were all the forefathers of Christ, right? So that entire, from Matthew chapter 1, verse 15, was the forefathers of Christ. Now here we go. Verse 16. And Jacob begat Joseph. So Jacob was in the genealogy of Christ, right? And Jacob, because in verse 15 it said Matan begat Jacob, right? So verse 16, and Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary. So Joseph is the son of Jacob when referring in reference to Matthew chapter 1 verse 15. So Joseph, the husband of Mary, it said the husband of Mary, right? Right? Joseph, the husband of Mary, is the son of Jacob in reference to Matthew chapter 1 verse 15. That Jacob. We're not talking about Jacob meaning Israel. We're talking about Jacob here, which is the son of Matan, right? So verse 16, and Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. Now here we go. Now, in reality, right? Do I have to explain any further? Con or lie? You know what I'm saying? Right? Of course I'm going to explain. But think about it. It's right there in front of our face. Joseph is in Christ's genealogy. Joseph comes from the line coming from the son of David and the son of Abraham. That's what verse 16 is saying. Does everybody understand that? Kind of lie. Does everybody understand that Matthew chapter 1 verse 16 is constituting that Joseph comes from the line of David and Abraham? Does everybody understand that? Like that's what verse 16 is saying. That's what verse 16 says. Right? Everybody understands that? Right? And then it also said that the husband, right? The husband of Mary. Right? So of course, before we get to verse 17, this is talking about this is in reference of Joseph and Mary already being together and having Christ. That's in reference. Verse 16 is also in reference of Joseph and Mary already being together and having Christ. And 17 and down, and when it starts at verse 18, is when it talks about. We're going to read verse 18 too, but when you get to verse 18, that's when it starts to get into detail about the birth of Christ and before the birth of Christ and all these things. But when you stop at verse 16 in Matthew chapter 1, it's in reference of Joseph and Mary already being together and having Christ. And so with that being said, right, the reason why I said that is because it says the husband of Mary, right? So first it's saying Joseph comes from the line of King David, from the line of Abraham, from the line of King Solomon, of the line of Rehoboam, the line of Ahaz and Abiah and all these people, right? Joseph is in the lineage and the generations of Jesus Christ. Joseph is in that line. Why would if Joseph was not the father of Christ, because in the Christian church, Christians teach that Joseph is not the biological father of Christ. If Joseph was not the biological father of Christ, then why was his lineage put in the Bible? This is Joseph's lineage. Lack of better words, right? This is Joseph's lineage. So why was Joseph's lineage put in the Bible if he had nothing to do with Christ? Nor was he biologically attached to Christ. Only Mary's lineage would matter if that's the case. Because she's the one that gave birth to him, right? So only her lineage would matter. So why is his lineage in the Bible? Right? Why is his lineage stated? Why does it say the generations of Jesus Christ, and then it ends with Joseph? Why? There's so many variables to be explained that a Christian cannot answer you. Because they don't know what they're talking about. And they're teaching you nothing but lies. And they have been teaching us nothing but lies when it comes to the birth of Christ. Now it says, Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary. Now, my question is to you. This is talking about Israelites. Right? This is talking about the Israelites. And because we know Joseph, now, okay, I cannot say that because the scripture does not say that. Alright? So this is what I will say. Alright? This is what I will say. Okay, right. This is what I will say because the scripture doesn't say that. Joseph comes from David. Because this is what the scripture does say. Joseph comes from King David. Which means King David is an Israelite. Right? King David is an Israelite. The lack of better words, which means Joseph is an Israelite. Meaning this is going to be based off of Israelite culture. Israelite heritage. Right? The traditions of the Israelites. So my question is to anybody online and anybody in class, how did Joseph become the husband of Mary? How did Joseph become the husband of Mary? How did Joseph become the husband of Mary? Right. That's how he became the husband of Mary. In order to be called the husband of Mary, you had to have sex with Mary. So right here, it proves to you right here in verse 16 that at the end of the day, Joseph had sex with Mary, and then of whom was born Jesus Christ. It said of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. Do you guys know what it means, of whom? Does anybody know that old term, of whom? Does anybody know? Anybody know?
Daddy, Slovakia.
1 second, princess. Sit on this side.
Slovakia.
Yes. In the next, give me about 15 minutes, and I'll make you some food before you go. All right? Because it's about to be bedtime soon. Okay?
Okay. And can you sing a bedtime story? Remember the bunny one is in the bedtime story? Remember that one? It's a bedtime story.
No problem, baby. I got you. Go sit down, princess. All right? All right. So now, can anybody tell me? Does anybody know what that of whom, right? Does anybody know when it says of whom was born? Of whom was born Jesus? Right? Does anybody know that of whom is talking about? Salaki, princess. Sit down and watch TV for me, alright? Of the two. Okay. Alright. Anybody else of the two? Okay, that's actually a very good one. Anybody else want to give it a shot? Now, of whom it says, and Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. Right? So when it says of whom, right? Of whom, of his seed, okay. Well, in the lack of better words, it could be saying that too in a way, but we don't want to say that, of his seed. You wouldn't be incorrect, but you wouldn't be following the context, if that makes the context would that be sense. So, but I do understand where you're coming from, sis, but when it says of whom was born Jesus, the of whom was talking about Joseph. Of whom, right? The he or she of the two, right? Of the two, right? But that of whom, when you use the word whom, it's substituting, it's really old English for who, right? But not exactly. It's a substitution for the subject of the object, all right? And so it's to substitute the he or the she for whoever is being spoken about. So because verse 16 is talking about Joseph, it says of whom was born Jesus. So meaning of Joseph was born Christ. That's literally what it's saying. Of Joseph was born Christ. That's literally what it's saying. Of whom was born Jesus. Meaning of Joseph was born Christ. Right. Almost like a possessive pronoun, and right, almost like a possessive pronoun in a way. Right, almost. Right? Pretty like that is a good comparison, Akwa. It's almost like it's showing ownership. Like this, Jesus Christ, this is what happened, and this is how Jesus Christ come here. This is how Jesus Christ came to be, right? Because of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom, meaning Joseph, was born Jesus. So of Joseph, right, was born Jesus, who is called Christ. All right. Let's jump down. Well, I'll read verse 17 too. Matthew chapter 1, verse 17. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David unto the carrying away into Babylon are 14 generations. And from the carrying away into Babylon unto Christ are 14 generations. Verse 18. Now the birth of Jesus Christ, the birth of Yahweh Shama Salaki. Go sit down, the water. So now the birth of Yahweh Shama, right, of Jesus Christ, was on this wise. So now this is talk now. Remember, verse 16 was in reference of Joseph and Mary already having sex and Christ coming to be. Right? And literally verse 16 literally said of whom, right? Literally says of whom was born Jesus, meaning of Joseph was born Jesus. Because of Joseph being married to Mary, Christ was born. That's literally what verse 16 said. I'm not making this up. It's right there, and well, I guess you could say black and white. It's lucky. But if you open up the Bible, it's written either in black and white or red and white. And in black and white, it's literally telling you that because of Joseph marrying Mary, right, having sex with Mary, Christ was born. All right. So, but now in verse 18, right? Now the birth of Jesus Christ was on this wise. Now this is talking about the birth of Jesus Christ, on how it happened. Now it's going to explain step by step what came to be when the angel spoke to Mary and Joseph and all this other stuff. Is about to go into detail about this. Now, have this into your notes. Next week's class is going to be the last class on this because we're going to wrap it up. All right. So now we're going to get into I'm gonna actually go back. That's what I'm gonna do. Okay. So Salakia. After tonight, you guys are gonna see a part 1 and a part 2 because I want to make sure you guys understand. I don't want to confuse anyone or any brother and sister that's going to be probably researching about the birth of Christ and anything like that. They might be looking at this as the same class twice, but it's not. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure to make sure there's no confusion. I'm gonna put a part 1 and a part 2, and then part 3 will be coming next week as well. Part 3, we're gonna get into how the angels came to Joseph, and the angel also came to Mary and all this other stuff. We're going to get into that, and that's pretty much going to sum up. That's going to sum the birth of Christ up in next week's class when it comes to the history. All right. Anybody have any questions?
Daddy, do you know how to make a fish? Do you know how to make a fish?
Salaki, princess, 1 second.
Do you know how to make a fish?
Any questions? Kind of loud.
Salakia.
Come on, princess.
Do you know how to make a fish?
I do.
I just teach you how.
No sweat, princess. Go ahead and sit down for me, right? Okay, I will be with you in 1 moment, okay?
And I should break my wrist.
Okay. All right. Nathania Akkad, Babu Kusha. Nathania Akkad, Babu Kusha. Give me 1, please. Nathania Akkad, Babu Kusha. Salaki, this is not the last one Kodash class. Salaki. Salaki. All right. Okay, la. Okay, la. Count la. All right. Count la.
No.
All right. With that. La. Okay. That's good. Okay, la. Let's see.
Look. I'll make a picture again.
1 second, princess.
Daddy. Salakia.
What?
I'll make a picture again.
Come on. Just 1 second, princess, all right?
Yes.
1 second, Princess. All right, with that, we'll get the announcements. Okay, Princess, I'll take a look at it.
Okay.
I'll take a look at it, Princess. All right. ISUPK security announcements. We are the ISUPK. Start at the 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Rule for new brothers and sisters. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to share themselves with the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There is another 6 months in which the brother and sister will court each other. After this 6-month period, the brother and sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment. Numbers 18:21, Malachi chapter 3 verse 8 through 10. Ma'ashra means tenth in the Hebrew. 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you. Give to treasury department or teacher. Priest fund, free will offering for priests, not mandatory. Whatsoever amount you would like. Upcoming holy convocations. The next is the Feast of First Fruits, which is on, we'll start, that Feast of First Fruits will be on May 22nd. Get in contact also with your camp leader and the brothers in the school, and they'll give you specific instructions on what they're going to do for the feast, of where you guys will meet. Usually it's always going to be at the school. Of course, if you're in the state of Virginia, get in contact with the camp leader, and we are actually in preparation for the feast as we speak, so all the brothers and sisters in Virginia can come together and enjoy ourselves and serve the Lord the way the Lord is supposed to be served. All right. With that, I say Amadium, which means to stand. All right. We're going to give a courteous salute to the brothers. Men of Israel, Amadium Shabbat, Immaculate, Barak, Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahushua B'Katham, Yanamata, Sar La'akwafia, which means turn to the sisters. Men of Israel, we're going to give a courteous salute to the sisters. Men of Israel, Amadium Shabbat, Amadium, Barak, Yahweh Shema Alathan Ba'ashem Yahushua, Yanamata. With that, class dismissed.